Nice
Yeah,
to
hey,
meet you.
that's what's up, everyone. Welcome. Hey, we're live on the Second Chance podcast. So make sure post your questions up in the comments. Tonight we have an amazing group. Not only do we have Billy Ferguson with us, you got myself, Jeff Robertson, and then we're joined by Jenn Johnson, who goes by Nurse Jen. So we're excited. Billy, introduce yourself. Tell everybody all about Billy.
Well, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be watching from. But my name is Billy Ferguson. I've been in fire EMS emergency management for about 43 years. I was a volunteer for 10 years in my local EMS system here in Virginia. Then I was fortunate enough to get hired into a career system and where I remained for 33 and a half years, reaching the rank of chief of the department. I retired back in April, and at that point, let me regress you a little bit. Was as part of the Department of Public Safety, I oversaw all fire, EMS, emergency management, communications, and believe it or not, animal control in our municipality. And so now I was retired, and after about 2 months, I kind of got bored of that and figured out that's not cut out for me. And working with Jeff in his other world, started my own LLC, and now I'm reaching out to folks and I'm doing emergency operations plans, doing some OSHA type teaching or medical type, fire type teaching for different localities. I just finished up actually 2 weeks ago tonight down in Richmond, Virginia, working with HCA hospitals down there on some of their OSHA planning. And I've also been in contact this week with some hospitals out in Tidewater area of Virginia. And currently I'm working on an emergency operations plan for a neighboring locality here in Virginia. And so if anybody watching, listening has any questions, you can get a hold of Jeff and he'll give you my contact information. So reach out and we'll talk. And hopefully can come to an agreement to benefit all of us. So thank you.
Hey, your clickers is feeding back there too. So
Oh,
just so you
okay.
know, just so you know, it was clicking back through. I give you the warning sign sometimes. I
I think
gave
I think I think
this.
better when I'm doing that.
It's, I know. Listen, I had to. I started doing it the other day because I was writing notes and I just started like listening. I was like, "Holy crap!" And I'm sitting here clicking away by my microphone, and I'm sure that one is not going to edit out well. But just so the other part, Billy, that we want to bring out is you worked at no here we are, Nurse Jen ER, but you also got some time in the emergency room. Me and you
I
spent
did.
me and you.
I did late '80s, early '90s. I worked in a local hospital in the emergency room as a paramedic, and they really let us put our skills to use, and we got to do a lot of skills there that some that we probably were in a little bit over our head of doing, but it was experience. I remember one time we got to do the normal skills, but then one time I got to put a chest tube in. I just thought that was super cool. We had a patient that came in with a stab wound, and I asked the doctor when he was coming in. He was talking about chest tube, and I said, "You gonna let me do that?" And he said, "Sure." And so he was right there with me when he was doing it. But I'll never forget. He made the incision in the chest, and it was on the left side of the chest, and he's got it, and he takes the forceps and opens the incision up, and he's letting me kind of push the chest tube in, and he's going to be careful, don't shisk above the heart. Well,
I remember that
yes, sir. But I,
story.
I did work 8 years in an ER. Had a ton of experience, especially when it come down to, radiology stuff, interpreting lab work, using IV pumps and the like. It was a really, I wouldn't trade it for nothing there in the ER. So I think I left there about 94, 95, I believe it was, because it was a part time endeavor. I worked that out from my other job, but yeah, I did. Thanks for bringing that up, Jeff.
Yeah, no, I mean that's what I had told Jen. I was like, the Billy and I not only connected through EMS, but we also spent shifts in the emergency room together, and he was just one of my mentors coming up through the game. So let's jump right in. And I went out of order. My brain went counterclockwise after we were talking. But tonight, me and Billy's been. Sometimes we do this, Jen. Just so you know, he and I'll do this episode by ourselves, but we enjoy it when we get to have someone come along just to complement what we do and our messaging and some of the conversations we have that centers around business, leadership, which falls into public safety and that emergency room setting. From all of our backgrounds, like I had messaged you today, and then kind of where we all are now and how we're using all those skills inside of our business to move forward. So, what'll happen sometimes, Jen, is like Billy. Uh, uh, he's either doing something or whatever, and I'll just give him some tips from a business coach standpoint. And tonight, one of the things that I wanted you to get into is that segue for yourself as you were breaking into public speaking. You're speaking, and then we're live tonight, so we get to let everyone know about your cool announcements you got coming up, and then
All
how that all
the
kind of
things,
intertwines
all
with
the
your book. So
things.
I wanted to tell you all that because
Oh my
basically you
God.
have the floor until you stop talking.
Don't
So
start with
there's Jen.
the
Take it
not
away.
until I stop talking. And Billy, I'm going to send you. So I've got the same pen, but it's got a roller ball. This is the new ADHD. This is the new ADHD thing. I can't
Ah,
live
good
without these things.
deal.
They're fantastic. So
Good
I'm Jenn
deal. So,
Johnson. I'm an ER nurse out of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. The token Canadian usually in most conversations. I've been doing ER nursing for 16 years, pushing 17 this year. And it's been chaos, absolute chaos. So I have worked places where I was the only ER nurse and that was it. And then have worked other places where it's a trauma center, it's a stroke center, it's a pediatric emergency department, all over the place. Couldn't really pin me down for a little while there. I've kind of settled a little bit currently, but then you get comfortable for a bit, and then it's like, okay, so now what? And it's, well, apparently burning out hard with COVID allowed me to write a book on nursing intuition and trusting your gut. And, it's a very well respected thing in policing, absolutely. And fire, I can only imagine. But it's a very woo woo topic in nursing, even though, it's a bunch of females. So you'd think, we'd have this down pat by now. But talking about nursing intuition, talking about business, having started a business with COVID and have pivoted 3 or 4 times now to finally have written some journals to help nurses transition between um, going from school to bedside, keeping track of all the little wins. Because as you guys both know, like, nursing's hard, the ER is hard, it's all hard. So hoping to try and make it a little bit easier for people as they transition into the chaotic world of nursing and potentially emergency nursing. But yeah, just hanging out. And it's been, working part-time in the ER still, doing the business kind of part-time, doing a little bit of agency work, playing devil's advocate, and just having a super fun time doing it all.
Tell us. So got to hear a little bit about Billy's background, but tonight we get to hear live.
This is our
You
third
and I,
time.
this is our third time catching up. But give yes, give Billy and our audience that little bit a snapshot of Nurse Jen and how we kind of ended up through these
Yeah,
conversations and your second chance that we talked about during our first
way
episode. So if you
back.
want to hear all of it, folks, go back. But so Jen, just tell us how you ended up into all those
Oh my God.
phases
I've
that
fallen
led you into
face
where you are
first
now.
into all of my opportunities, from starting out in a biology degree, failing a course and having to pivot, and really finding nursing and being happy with that transition, being fired from my first job after only a couple of weeks after a medication error. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, but that was a whole learning curve about, when push comes to shove, nobody's gonna back you if they can save themselves. And dealing with that and coming around to the fact of, like, okay, it's just me. This is my license. This is what I've got to do. Trudging through, going back to the same job after being fired and staying there for 5 years was just, wouldn't wish it on anybody. But getting
What was the what was that?
yep,
Because we talked about this a little bit. I was telling Billy a little bit about it, but that
yeah,
moment that got you fired, um, that kind of teed you off. It was it was one of those moments that I feel like that I've probably watched happen at some point in time, or heard of in our own hometown. Billy and I, we when I was coming up, there's not uncommon for one nurse to be in our little emergency room. So we're very familiar with your setting that you grew up in, because he and I was we were the techs working along that one
yep,
nurse and that one doctor in most cases. So, but give us just a deeper dive into that moment that
yeah.
really helped set
So
you up
what
to
had
where you're
originally
headed now.
happened? So I was a new grad. I was still on probation. I was working the ER, and my so it's just me, just my physician, and then the patients. And my physician had said, "Oh, just a verbal order." So they didn't write it down. They just kind of verbally told me, "Hey, can you get that person some codeine syrup, 40 milligrams?" So I said, 40 milligrams. Yep, yep, yep. Okay, went, grabbed it, or 40 mils rather, gave it to the patient. And I said, "Oh man, that was a lot." And she goes, "What?" And I said, "Well, you said 40 mils." She's like, "No, I said 40 milligrams." I said, "No, you said 40 mils." And she goes, "Oh my God, how much did you give 40 mils?" I said, "Yeah." She's like, "That's 8 times the dose of what they were supposed to have." And so thankfully, a young patient, nothing really happened. They were just a little dozy for a few hours. But in talking to the physician afterwards, she had said, "Oh, you know what? That was my mistake. I really should have taken, we did talk about it." And she took responsibility at that time. But when it came back, she had said, "No, I told her 40 milligrams." And so sunk me. And it was the first time in my entire life where someone flat out lied to protect themselves and put me up on the chopping block. And it was just one of those moments where you go, I can't trust anybody as far as I can throw them. And it changes your whole practice. So now, everything's written down. New docs, I need to work with you for a few years before I really kind of give you any leeway about verbal orders kind of thing. But it was just, that moment where I'm like, I can't stay here for a lifetime. So my husband is from that town. We literally live next door to his mother. Um, Truly, literally, actually live next door to his mother. And I said, you know what? I'm going to be the most educated nurse to ever leave this place. And ended up racking up certificate after certificate. And 5 years later was finally able to leave and come back down south, southern Ontario, to come closer to family my way. And it's just been that thing where it's I I'm never going to be put in that position ever again. I'm going to be the most educated nurse to ever leave that place. And I think I might have been. I don't know, because I try not to keep tabs, but it's got me to a place where it's like, no matter what, I'm going to support the little guy. There was no support at that hospital. It was constant bullying. It was absolutely brutal. And so I refuse to let anybody else go through what I went through. And so that's kind of led me down this road of advocacy and really supporting your new nurses, and getting to a place where it's all about supporting the new. And I'm sorry if you can hear my if you can hear my
Jen,
washer that's literally above me.
Um, no, I was waiting for Billy to click his pen. I'm just kidding, Billy. But here's what I would here's and Billy, this is a part where I think Jen and I hit it off. Is we both worked in the emergency room, and we've heard these stories. I was trying to remember if any point in time, but here's the and one of the commonalities that we share is I know what it's like to turn my career upside down in a small town, and what how that um I talk about it. I've podcasted 4 times this week, and I really got down in the weeds about just what I went through during those times, and how I felt like I had underserved my community and the pressure I put on myself. Not only did I let myself down, all my peers, because that was my identity and that's who I was, and that's even now. I was telling someone the other day, this, Billy, is I'll be in our hometown, and somebody will come up to me and start talking to me about law enforcement or stuff that I used to do because that's who they want me to be, that's who they know me as because I did that for so freaking long. So the pressures that come along with that, and when you're in that community and you're back
Hmm.
in, and Jen, that's something you and I talked about, was just your relationship with the one store or
Oh
the
yeah.
one
So
gas
my
station that you
mother-in-law,
had in that town.
owned the one Esso station in town. There was only one other gas station in town, so her business was the hub. It was the gossip center of everything. And I'd never grew up in a small town. I had never experienced small town life. So to come into it and then, have her coming home daily and, oh my God, you wouldn't believe who said this and da, 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 and what about this? And then she's asking me if things are true. And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, oh my God. And just like the isolation, all of a sudden you are the black plague and nobody's talking to you. And in a town of, less than 5,000 people where I already really don't know anybody, horrifically isolating. And just the gossip and the drama that just spiraled out of control. Um, would not recommend at all. It really put me off of rural nursing for sure. It's hard.
Yeah, it's tough times. Yeah, it teed you up though for this
Silver
amazing journey.
linings.
and and tonight, you've gone on to speak and write books, and then you also have a pretty cool announcement that we want to put out there on something, a cool event that you
So
got
I
coming
don't
up.
know if
What is
a
that?
lot of your listeners know. Again, nursing is a very niche. So if you don't really lean towards the nursing side of things, or your spouse isn't a nurse, sometimes who I think is a big deal doesn't seem like a big deal in anybody else's world. But Nurse Blake is a really big influencer, TikToker, on the nursing side of things. Makes a lot of jokes, has gotten a lot of us through a lot of tough times, especially through COVID, with just jokes after jokes after jokes and situations, and really shining a hilarious, ridiculously accurate light on nursing. And so he's done conferences that he's come up with, so Nurse Con. And so half of these conferences are on a cruise ship. I'm going on a cruise ship in April with him. It's 3,000 nurses on a cruise ship. Apparently the first time they did this, they ran out of booze the first night. They misunderstood the needs of the nurses and we drank them all under the table. And so, going to one of his land-based events in this past September, getting to know his team, got asked to apply to his education team in relation to my book. Didn't get the cruise, but they ended up figuring out that they wanted me for his oh my God, it's camp nurse. So it's 450 people. It's a camp right outside on the edge of Pennsylvania and New York. And it's your typical, age 6 to age 13 camp, but throw in a little bit of a nursing conference plus all inclusive. So I get to teach for the first time in such a massive space. And I'm, um, you know, nervous as all get out, but am just so unbelievably excited. Signed the 17-page contract, um, and had to clarify some things before signing it. But I'm just blown away that everything has finally led up to this, and it's still kind of unbelievable on my end.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So that's a neat, when we talk about this, Billy, is that's a really neat, thinking about where you were, Jen. You and I have talked about that, of that nurse that's standing in that little town that is thinking about whether she will
Yeah.
ever go on to do anything. And here you are being able to just continue, life continues on. It's that's that resilience pursuit that that happens, that if you just um, no matter
Yeah.
what kind of stumbles, is play the long game. It's better, it's always something. And at the time, it's so hard to figure that out. Listen to that advice. I'm if I was going back to telling 20, 24, 25, and then 35
Neither
year
would
old Jeff
I.
this advice, he ain't gonna listen. He's not absolutely gonna listen to it. Yeah. But it's
Yeah.
really cool to
20,
celebrate where
24 year
you
old
are now.
Jenn, you couldn't talk to her. She thought she knew it all, and she got put in her place really
Yeah.
fast.
What kind of volume are you guys doing in your
Um,
emergency room now that you're working in?
Usually
What
anywhere
does the
from
day
like,
look like
I
for
mean,
you
we're
all?
up now, 60 to 80 patients in 24 hours, which still is kind of on the lower side, like on the smaller side of what we're surrounded by, but we're sandwiched in between two hospital systems on a major highway. So it's kind of, you know, if they're transferring from one hospital to the bigger hospital and something goes wrong, they stop at us, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, you want to throw in a chest tube? I still can't believe that, Billy. Oh my god. I I hate chest tubes. I think they're so awful. They're so painful, and it's I'm in complete awe. 100%, you know, bow to you, because that's absolutely insane.
So I'll add to a little bit. You said you hate chest tubes; they're so painful. A little about me, Jeff knows. So in November of
Oh,
2023, I had to have open heart surgery, and I really worried about the pain and how it's going to be. Well, the pain from the bypass was nothing compared to the pain of taking the chest tubes out. That was excruciating. It didn't last long, but I swear I think that doctor got up in the bed
100%.
with me and was
It's
pulling
not
that
it's
thing
not
out.
pleasant.
And
Like, and
right,
it's really, it takes a lot of
yeah.
force, like a lot of force, and it's just, you're slipping over the rib, you're slipping under
Mhm.
the rib, your doc's having a hard time, and you're just sitting there going like, oh my god, please get this in fast. You're feeling
And you're
all of
feeling
it.
all that. You're
It's
feeling all that
horrid.
internally.
I just like, they're like, let's put a little bit of
Yes.
lidocaine just on the outer skin. The outer skin, are you kidding me? Like, oh my god, okay. Can we give some morphine or some fentanyl or some like Dilaudid?
Yeah.
Can we knock this poor person out, please?
Yeah. Yeah, that's I remember Billy when you did that, and that was a neat, because you're a paramedic then, but it's still, though, it's a
Oh yeah.
skill that is heavily supervised,
Mhm.
um, even in that setting. I remember when you started talking about that. I remember that because it was one of the cooler things that small town folks got to do. But like we also I feel like that a lot of that stuff, Billy, and you can help remind me of this, but it seemed like a lot of the skills that we were able to do back then was based on the doc as well, maybe who our OMD was and things along those lines. Am I right on that, Billy?
Yeah, you're right. We've been fortunate enough. I've been this long enough. I remember where you didn't before OMDs came along. We had what they called a physician advisor, and I was just sitting here thinking when you and Jen was talking about early on, where it was just one nurse and one doc, and I was up at the local ER last Wednesday, and I was telling my wife that I can remember back in the '80s where there was no doc in the ER. It was a nurse, and you had like an aide, and it was a doctor there at night. But in the daytime, they had to call a doctor from like a clinic that would come and do whatever the doctor needed to do. But there was no doctors there. Now I was there, and this was last Wednesday. There was three doctors there, and there was like three PAs there, and it was just amazing to see the growth and the transitions of that. But then again, back in the early '80s, if the ER saw 9 patients in a 24-hour time, that was a lot of patients. Now they're probably up in that 50, 60 range or day. But you're right, Doc. Jeff, our OMDs have always been real progressive, and fortunately, most of them came from a pre-hospital background, and they would let us let us do. I don't want to say anything we wanted because that's not true, but they were very progressive on the cutting edge. And if it was something they thought we could do, and
Well,
within,
I think Billy, it's a testament to early decentralizing command and leadership because our transport time to our hospital could be many minutes, depending on where you were in the county. We served the seventh largest county in Virginia, was where we were, and then we could get into our city hospital easier than we could our local hospital if you were on a particular side of town. So if you were west or east, you end up having to come to Roanoke or to Rocky Mount in that central location, and then think you would life flight out of there, Jen. So if it was super bad, early days, our station was the primary transport for anything severely life threatening that needed to be trained. If it was severe trauma or heart attack wise, is we were the main transport agency that transported those people. So I was always around paramedics and highly trained providers back then, so they carried a lot of pressure. So I think when you look at it too, folks, as we're talking here, this is what we talk about. It was hard to micromanage in that climate. Billy, am I telling it right?
yeah, I think you tell it right. And it makes, and I'm reflecting as you're talking, and it remind me of talking to a doctor one day in our ER, and I was talking to him, and I was, he had come from some big regional centers, and I remember this patient crashing one day, and he's doing all this stuff. And I'm going, don't it bother you that you're the only doctor here, and you're the cardiologist, you're the neurologist, you're the radiologist, everything. And he said, no, I actually like it because I get to practice everything. Whereas
Yeah.
that you go to these big centers, and these 700, 800 bed hospitals that have 100 ERs, and the actual ER doctor, he's just maintaining the airway, stopping the bleeding, and calling somebody. If it's a heart issue, they're calling a cardiologist. If it's how it goes. So you really only got to do this much of the entire patient care. But I think you're hitting it right on, Jeff, because we were it. I mean, if you came into that local hospital, you did the best you could to keep people breathing and keep blood circulating until you could get them up to a regional transfer center. Um, and even back in them days, early on in my first, I remember the first helicopter here. It was by ground, um, and we did some things then that I guess we thought was cutting edge, but it was like, right now you're like, well, we did that, And one thing that really stands out, Jeff, and you can probably remember too, is I can remember if a patient came in, the local hospital at that time, I'm talking early 80s, early to mid 80s, they didn't have a CT scanner.
Yeah.
So if a patient came in with like a head issue and a doctor suspected it may be a bleed or something, an ambulance would take the patient up to a regional center. They do the scan and then send them back to the local hospital. Well, why are they coming back if you found something? I mean, because they're going to have to be up there to get it fixed. And now, but that was the way of doing things then, and now it's kind of like,
Separate owners, Billy. Remember, it used to be they were independently owned. I think.
yeah, they were.
I think that may have been the issue was they were independently owned, so they didn't until it became the diet. Like it was a big deal to go between
So even
those hospitals.
sorry, Billy.
Absolutely. You're
I mean, even now,
Go
so
ahead,
the
Jen.
hospital that I'm working at currently, we only just got a CT scanner in there right before COVID. Like this is,
How many
oh
people's
man,
in your area?
so
What's the town? I'll look
Grimsby,
it up. What's
Ontario.
what's
It's
the
halfway in between like Niagara Falls and Toronto. So Grimsby, Grim.
Greensby?
Yeah.
Grimsby.
And it's
Got it.
it's this little blip in between several major centers on the QEW.
Yeah, it's still 30,000 people though. 28,883. So that's still what is Franklin Billy?
Yeah, Franklin County,
Yeah.
our county is about 57,000, but
Yeah.
the town me and
Yeah.
Jeff grew up in is about 4,800. But we were kind of with medical care. I think sometimes we were were in a good situation one way you looked at it, and the other situation was a bad situation because, unlike medicine in Canada, we
Mhm.
if we were considered urban because we were less than like 30 miles from a major center. So if there was money, federal money coming down, it would go to the major centers. So the little hospitals who was less than like 30 miles away, they could still see them urban, even though there was another county and another town. So it really, the money you operated
Yeah.
on was basically all patient pay money, which a lot of times, as you know, in the ER, that doesn't happen a lot. So I think that hurt us in one way. But the positive was that we had a small hospital, still a small hospital, but I just learned 2 weeks ago that now they're doing their first neurosurgery stuff. And
Really?
years ago, they got a
Yeah.
neurosurgeon there now. They do pacemakers, but you know, 25 years ago, they couldn't have took out tonsils or the like or something. So even though it's small, they all progress. And as you was talking about hospitals being independent, Jeff, I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe there's only two independent hospitals in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia now. The rest of them are in big systems. It's like our hospitals we're known as Carillion Clinic. And it's modeled after the Cleveland Clinic, but I want to say it's something like 9 hospitals and 40 practices, or because our little hospital is basically it's 2 stories, but you go 20 miles up the road. There's one
Yeah.
that's 15 stories and 1 million square feet, has almost 800 beds in it. That does everything. I think the only thing they don't do there is burns. They can't do burn center stuff.
Unreal.
But anyway, yeah.
Jen, back to you. How's that? How does that
So
pale
my
in
area,
comparison to
so
like
where
your
I'm
area
working at
there?
now, like it was kind of swallowed up by the big hospital system down the road. So everybody forgets in the town that we're no longer our own hospital. We're part of this other hospital system, but we're still in the Niagara region. So it's this weird, Niagara EMS, they service us most times. Hamilton EMS will come occasionally, but they're not supposed to. Um, and a lot of what we're seeing right now is people who don't like St. Catherine's, which is the closest sister hospital, which is like maybe 20 minutes down the road. They hate St. Catherine's Hospital. So they're like, the wait times are insane and the wait times online are nuts. So we're coming here. And I'm like, you realize that if we refer you to anything, like any specialty or fracture clinic or anything like that, you're going to go Hamilton way, which is another like 40 minutes up the road from where you are. And people are like, we just we don't like the wait times. And you're like, well, we have wait times here too, unfortunately. Like, they're like, oh, but we check the wait time tracker.
Is is your EMS paid?
No. Oh
Do you
no, so
charge for
we
service?
you
Not
do you
not
do
just
get
paid, but
dinged. So
that
45 or $50. If you're not on disability or over 65, I think you get dinged. Because actually free.
healthcare where you are is it's government subsidized, right?
We're
We
all
don't want to
paying
call it
for
free. Somebody's paying for
it.
it, but
We're all paying
it's
for it.
it's
But you're
yeah.
not seeing a bill. There's no emphasis to avoid the ER. For a lot of people, it's actually their quickest access point to healthcare because they can't find family doctors, or they don't like their family doctors, or they
Yeah,
can't get
same.
into their family doctors, or the family doctor's going like, I don't really know, go to the ER. And then we're getting people sent from their family docs all the
Yeah.
time. And you're going, this isn't an emergency. Like 60 to 70% of what I'm seeing should have not even walked through the door. Could have gone to a walk-in clinic, urgent care, or their family doc. Oh yeah.
I think it's consistent though. I think I think it's. I don't even back in my day, and I'm very dated. But that was our the emergency room saw
Yeah.
folks that didn't have any options otherwise, um, and the other thing I think you would say back then, and I don't know that this has changed a lot just from conversations with friends, is um, folks will wait until they're just literally miserable and can't stand it, and the doctor's office is closed, so they end up in the emergency room when they probably could have waited out a little bit longer, went and saw their primary care, but then it's you got to get an appointment. So it's Billy. Does that happen still? You think or?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm just listening to Jen, and it sounds like she lives in our town. It was the same. It's the same type of thing almost. That everything goes to the ER. And I think I can speak for our area, and I don't think sometimes that's because they want to. It's because there's not enough family physicians and doctors to see the folks. And if you call and want an appointment, you may get
Yeah.
that appointment, 5 weeks from now. Well, if I'm going to survive 5 more weeks, I probably need to go to the doctor. So I think they go there out of necessity because they know that they're going to get those folks in there. But yeah, Jeff, I think you're right that people are using the ERs now
Very much
as
so.
their family physicians.
Yeah.
I think that's been, that sometimes maybe that we've caused that to happen because, as we strive to improve healthcare, it's okay, if you have these symptoms, call 911, rather than just thinking about it. Or I know when we was going through COVID, one thing here is that, we would go out with all these public service announcements about get COVID tested,
Yeah.
get tested, but we didn't tell you where to go get tested.
Yeah.
I just assumed it was going to the ER. So we had stuff going on to the ER, and I think that with that, we've gotten here in our hospital, we've gotten a really progressive and really strong leader here now that started out as an ER nurse here, moved on to the largest centers, now has come back, and I think that he's been that nurse. He's been in the trenches, and as Theodore Roosevelt said, he's been in the arena and knows what it's like. And now he's got a good leadership team together and proving that not only are we a rural hospital, but we bring something to the table to the largest system. And I think it's important to make sure that we have uh, strong leaders in healthcare, and it's not all about the money. I know it takes money to survive and do all the things that's needed, but he's working to grow the system and lead the folks and get the right people in to improve the life of the community.
Do you I want to hear from both of you on this because both of you are closer to this than I am. I see the benefits of that outside influence coming in to just help something grow. Otherwise, becomes, this is the way we do it. It's local. You're meeting the demands, and sometimes that person, um, when you're dealing with problems, your skill set of dealing with those problems is only so big versus someone from the outside who's got a bigger skill set that can help problem solve from different areas. Jen, do you see the benefits of those outside influences, and do you see the
Oh,
resistance
100%. I
that
mean,
comes
even
from
if we were
within
to
still?
have, so we would have locum physicians come up north, right? Like they'd come in, they'd do a couple of days or a week or a month sometimes, and they'd help cover the emerge. They'd help cover the emerge because, it was just family docs covering the emerge. So this way our family docs got a bit of a break and could then open up their appointments to their own patients. And it was really nice. Sometimes it was actually really comforting when you'd get a doc who knew what they were doing and who'd been in like true medical emergencies, because I'd been in the situation before where kid on a bike, like 20-year-old on a motorcycle. There was an outside dirt track, and it was so big that nobody realized that the guy had gone down and had been down for about 10 minutes before they realized that he was, hadn't come around. Went out, grabbed him, brought him into the emerge, and the doc said like, "Oh my God, I've forgotten how to intubate." And I'm looking at my doc going like, "What are you talking about?" And
Mm.
I've barely got a year in at this point. I'm going, call somebody else, call somebody else, call somebody else. And it was just, I begged that kid for 6 hours waiting for Orange, which is life flight this way. And it took 6 hours for them to come in and pick him up. It was bad. But yeah.
Jen, I just want to ask you something right there is that just me talking about local tenants coming in, and we used to have that here a lot. How did you handle uh, the credentialing process, if they were, I mean, I'm assuming you mentioned
Yeah.
Ontario there, so I
Yep.
think you're just
Right
outside
there.
of Buffalo and Niagara over on this side. How did you have U.S. doctors coming in doing that? If so, how did they get
I think a
credentialed
lot of the ones
and
that
all
came
that?
up north, so Northern Ontario, a lot of them were coming from Southern Ontario, because again, you get a lot of money going to do
Okay,
these
okay.
locums, right? Because it's an underserviced area. There's not a lot of access to medical care in general. So the government's willing to pay for physicians to come up there. So usually they're coming in through so like agency nursing for us, right? It's kind of the same thing. So there's one big agency that I forgot the name of it, but Health Force Ontario. So you register with Health Force Ontario. You go through, you've got all your immunizations up to date. You've got your degree. You've got your diplomas. You've got your credentialing numbers. Like you're going through all those steps with them before they then go, okay, so we've got this job, that job, whatever job, and then sending the physicians out to wherever. So it's typically, there's usually a mitigating agency in the middle of everything, collecting money left, right, and center, who then, tries to fill the gaps. It's the same with nursing, like being a part of a nursing agency. I mean, I've never had to do a vulnerable sector check, like a police records check, so often as I have for agency nursing. Usually with the hospital systems, you get hired, you provide your police records check that's up to date at that point. They never check again. Like you could have 6 DUIs and it wouldn't show up because nobody's asking for repeated police records checks once you're hired as a staff. So it's kind of a mismanagement.
Do you? I think you and I've talked about this, Jen. But for Billy, do you all have recruitment issues, and do y'all have the same staffing
Yeah.
issues trying to fill your shifts like we saw kind of during COVID, coming out of
Oh,
COVID, where
it
nurses
was
was such high
ridiculous. It's the
demand?
same thing, right? So at least at at my job, um, nobody called in sick when COVID first started because everybody was saving their sick time in case you ended up intubated, because nobody knew what was going to happen tomorrow or the next day or the next day. Policies and procedures were changing morning to afternoon to night. And then like every single day, it would change multiple times in a day. So you had no idea what the hell was going on. And, we all just showed up. Everybody showed up for their shift. And that was it. Nobody picked up overtime. Nobody called in sick unless you were actually sick. Because we all were just hoarding our sick days because heaven forbid something were to happen. And you needed all your sick time. So during the first 6 months of COVID, it wasn't too bad. Afterwards, once things started letting up a little bit, and then the worsening waves came after that. So for us, it really wasn't bad in the beginning. Like the anxiety and the stress of it all was really, really bad, but we weren't seeing the numbers that New York was seeing. Like, oh my God, we were all petrified because we watched New York fall and we're right across the border. Like it's right there. And we were just all waiting for it to hit the fan. And thank God it never did, at least not to that scale. But, with every winter, with every couple of months, as soon as they'd let everything open up a little bit again, the numbers would spike again. And truly, like the first wave that we saw was nothing compared to, I think, maybe 2 years after it all started. The numbers were through the roof. And, this is the time that our hospital systems are telling us, if you test positive, but you're asymptomatic, you can come on into work. Don't worry about it. You're fine. And we're all looking at each other going like,
Yeah,
you're insane, right?
I
Like
remember
you're
that.
absolutely.
You're telling me 2 years ago, if I left the
Die.
confines of my
Just
house, that I
done.
was going to kill somebody or die myself. Down to if you got the
It
sniffles,
was
come to
so
work.
bad. Like the mixed messaging, it was just like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, we never got to the point of wearing garbage bags like New York did, like thank God. But it still was like insanity. But once everything kind of let up a little bit, then everybody started to try and deal with the you get over that crisis moment and you finally start to feel again. And it's like, oh, like I'm completely overwhelmed. I'm sleep deprived. I'm not eating. I've gained 20 pounds. My kids are not socially adjusted because they've been in the house for 2 years. Like I'm out of my mind. And
I taught my kids how to do SWAT. We cleared the house. We learned how to do proper handling of their BB guns. We did room clearings. We did all sorts of fun stuff because I went back to my training and experience, Billy. I had them doing playing cards assignments. I mean, they are squared away if you need them. But that you take me to a question, Billy. Jen just teed me up maybe for a future episode for us because if my math is right, if my math is right, they're the most tactically sound kids you'll ever meet, Jen. Um, if my math is right, you're in the seat. You're the guy in charge of Franklin County Public Safety during 2020, during the shutdown, during the COVID era. Um, give us a little some maybe some leadership takeaways, and here's why and here's what got my brain, here's my curiosity that I think we can do a whole episode on this. But how is that those mixed messages, because I know what EMS and law enforcement's like. They're calling they're griping about everything under the sun. But Kylie, what's your tempo during those times?
Well, you are right. I was the chief of the department when COVID came about, you guys are spot on with what you're saying as far as the mixed messages. And we get different messages from hour to hour, and I would have department directors or even the citizens calling me, going, how many days are we supposed to quarantine? Are we supposed to wear a mask? And I'd go, yeah, you're supposed to do this. And 20 minutes later, you get another directive from the Department of Health going, and then it's like nobody knew what nobody was doing. It was like, we were doing the best we could, and we muddled through it, but we're kind of like the old duck swimming, that we were calm on top, but we were working like crap underwater because, there was times we didn't know what we was doing. We was just trying to follow the best practices at that moment. I think that was the most aggravating thing about it, was that there were so many messages coming out, do this, do that. And we saw the same thing that Jen was saying. It's like, I remember the first time I got a call from the state of Virginia saying that we had a COVID case in Franklin County. I remember that call distinctly. And like I had to make 10 phone calls, and that you thought this patient was going to be quarantined.
Yeah.
It was almost like, if you ever seen the old movie Outbreak, it was kind of like, everybody's quarantining this person, and we're putting a barbed wire around them. And then, a year and a half, we're going, oh, you sick? You got a fever? You coughing? No, don't care what that test said. Come on into work. And, it's like, well, 2 years ago, you said we couldn't do that. Well, that was best practice for us that time. But yeah, Jeff, we did see that. And we give a lot of mixed messages. And I think we still see that some. And I think that's been a lot of, and I'm sure Canada's in the same boat. That's been a lot of the driving force behind our educational issues we're having now and our economic issues we're having now, is because, that all this stuff was shut down. I mean, I can remember in our county or in the state of Virginia,
Yeah.
everything was basically closed up. I mean, there wasn't nowhere to go. I mean, you could go to the grocery store, but it's only like, during the day. You couldn't go at night. I remember, Walmart here used to always be open 24 hours a day. Well, even today, they close at 11 o'clock at night, and I don't think they'll ever get back to where they were. And, I never heard of virtual learning. Well, then schools went to virtual learning. Well, now even today here in my county, today was a virtual school day because
Can I ask
snow.
how much snow from the
Well,
Canadian perspective?
I don't even know what that means, really. Well, let's
Not
just
like what you got.
I just
You
sent
sent me a picture of yours. No, nothing like
you're, in my house, you're probably talking half an inch, maybe. And
What?
we've only went to school one day this week, and that was on Monday.
Oh my
And I think the 2 hour delays tomorrow. Um,
or hills. Like, I don't know about your area. One thing I find when you get down here is we're hills and valleys. And when I was working after, especially after the dealership moved, Billy, and we were on 220, we would get folks coming in from, wherever that was used to
No.
driving in snow. And I'm like, yeah, it don't work like it here. You go downhill to get uphill here, so it's everybody's stuck. Our four
Yeah.
lanes will get stuck because of truck traffic just can't go up the road, and it creates. I remember one time, it created a significant bottleneck, and it wasn't the weather. It wasn't that much snow. It's just the truck that was jackknife blocking the road, and created
Oh
that
my God.
5 o'clock traffic bottleneck. So
So I
Do
got a
it.
story to tell you about that, Jeff,
Yeah.
and
go ahead.
Jen will appreciate this. So I got a nephew that for about 4 years
Nice.
he lived in Fort Saskatchewan, Canada, well, out in the western side of Canada. And he would come down here, and it'd be like days like today where it would be snowing. It'd be like 18 degrees, and he'd be walking around with shorts and a t-shirt. And he would go, "Y'all cold? And you don't know what cold." And he sure was like thermometers at his house where it'd be like negative
With the
44
wind chill, it's
degrees and
bad.
stuff like that. So it's yeah, it's all relative to what you get used to there. But Jeff, you are right. A couple of tractor trailers cross up on a
Oh
hill,
my
and
God.
traffic's will back up for 20 miles.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's so I think Billy, we could probably at some point in time we could just kind of go down that whole road because it's something. Not only are you, I can tell you from the business side of the uncertainty of we were one of the last gyms, and we kind of knew, like, we our membership was they were counseling, and when the governors, they're putting a lot of pressure, so we're there's nothing we can do to um, keep our members engaged. We had it seemed like we're common sense type folks, me and the partner that I was working with at the time, and when they were like, yeah, if you're in close proximity,
Nice.
we had 6 foot boxes inside of our gym before anybody started talking about social distancing. We went and bought each box had we had them the weights from light to heavy, so depending on who you were, you could do that, and then no sharing of weights, and you had your own cleaning station basically inside there. So when you came in, you switched in, you put your workout shoes on, you went into whatever box that kind of met your thing. So we did all of this social distancing, and then in Virginia. We had a blue governor at the time, and he used the I'm a doctor, so trust me, and they shut down. Mine in particular, they shut down fitness centers, and then so that was probably for 2 weeks, maybe a little
Yeah.
bit. It was longer than that. That we were just down and we couldn't operate, and so that was probably first part of May, right? We were getting probably I think it's the second week of April, Billy, April 20th, I think is when it was, and then they didn't let us reopen until July 1st. And when we opened it July 1st, it was only at 20% of your capacity or 30%. So it was based on your occupancy. So we went back to basically what we was knowing. Here's what I would tell you from the business side. They installed all the hotlines to call and report when you saw people doing wrong things. But they let us be open. And we were in a strip mall, and man, every week I had to get on a call with the health department to go over the complaints that we had gotten. And I was, listen, y'all, I'm not one that deals with that stuff very well. And I'm like, I'm trying to run my business. I'm doing
Yeah.
what I'm supposed to do. You guys come and see. Like, come, stop taking everybody's word for it. You come see. Stop calling me and telling me I'm doing something wrong. Come see for yourself, type thing. And so finally one day I get this girl, and she's like me. She don't mind cutting you off, and I am throwing down. She's like, Jeff, and she talks like me. She's like, Jeff. I'm like, what? She goes, I didn't go. Ain't nothing gonna happen to this. I just got to call and tell you. I just got and I said, do what? She goes. I understand you're doing the right thing. I just got to follow up on the complaint.
Yeah.
Thank you. You don't have to. Don't get upset with this. And I go, this is what I said, y'all. I go, how many complaints you get on Kroger? She goes, oh my God. She goes, I can't talk about it, but I'll just tell you this: you wouldn't want to be them. Um, so we just got, and I finally, it gave me my perspective of like, this lady's just in her world, and all those folks, they are just doing what some knucklehead is put in rules for them to do, and their uncertainty of the world, they're just trying to make sure that they keep their livelihood protected. That was tough. We bought an ozone machine when they said COVID was being passed in the HVA systems in Texas when they had an outbreak. Um, we bought an ozone machine and we would clean the air in the gym every night. Like we would take it. The ozone machine displaces all the oxygen, and then when it cuts off, all the oxygen comes back. So every morning you walked in, it smelled like new money in the gym.
Well, Jeff, you bring up some points, but I'd also like to add to that is, you know, let's move a little further. You were a private business, and there were certain rules you had to go by, and I want to say most of those rules were suggestions versus requirements, and you still had the ability or the freedom to express Jeff Robertson's feelings about the entire thing. On my side, I was working for the government, and it didn't matter what my feelings were of the whole thing. I had to put out a strong message, and I hope I was a good leader in that because I had to balance people that thought the end of the world was coming with people that thought this is the biggest hoax that's ever been, and I had to kind of balance that between everybody and be really careful as to what you said because I was catching it from everybody. Um, and like you said, I finally had an emergency manager with the Commonwealth say, "Look, dude, you know, don't get in a bind over this. We're just doing our job. We're not going to come check you. We're just telling you what we've done." But still, I had that balance. And what made me think about that was when you mentioned the blue governor, being a Democrat. I had Republicans yelling one way at me. I had Democrats yelling one way. I had Libertarians yelling one way. And then I'm giving everybody mixed messages because that's what I got. So that really made it tough. And I think looking back on my career in public safety, I think those 2 years were probably two of the strongest leadership years that I had because of the delicate balance you had to you had to navigate those waters that nobody navigated before and
Oh
kind of
yeah,
keep everybody happy. Does that make
100%.
sense, or am I just kind of
Absolutely. It's we get forged through resilience, man. And to tell you,
Oh,
the business stuff was a requirement. It wasn't suggested. We had to follow the rules, or we couldn't operate, or we had to follow the rules, and then there was fines, like the health person. What we found out was like they didn't know. They just freaking we used to go in a restaurant with a mask on. You said that you had to put it on, take a bite. Just there was just it got to more common sense. None of this was making sense.
Mhm.
Restaurants couldn't have allowed. In my friend had to rent tents. He could have outdoor dining with
yeah.
X number of seats, but he couldn't have people indoors. So basically, and this is you're talking in August. I mean, in April, when it's still chilly here, Jen, and then he's a night restaurant, so he's got people sitting outside in a closed
We did the
tent, but it was
same.
outdoor dining in their world.
We had the
It just
exact same
absolute,
where people, that was a
absolutely
way to kind of get
insanity.
around it, was like these tents and try and get it organized. But I mean, it was the same thing in the ER. So the way my ER worked was it was already perfectly set up to kind of, we had you walked in and there was two doors and you could lock both doors. And it already had a little window in it. It was like perfectly set up. And so to like stand there and screen people all the time and then have people screaming at you about like, their viewpoints versus our viewpoints, and this is BS, and obviously everybody's upset, and it just, you became the bouncer. It was so much work to then go from like nursing to screening people and having them scream at you. I'm sorry, we aren't allowed to have people to have family in. Like we didn't let family in for like a year and a half. If you had a loved one in the hospital, you could not come see them. Didn't matter if they were on death's door or not. You could not come in. and like having people just rip into you, and you're like, I get it, it's absolutely insane, but guess what, this is my job right now. And so when there was a point at which, we were asking about COVID vaccinations at screening, and man, the pushback we got about that was just absolutely unbelievable. Because again, people are frustrated and everybody's got different opinions about what. And it got to the point where I'm like, well, here I'm thinking on my own to say, if you've got a fever, if you've got a shortness of breath, if you've got a cough, you're getting isolated regardless if you've got the vaccine or not. So, the only person that's being harmed is me. Like, I'm having to deal with this. It's changing my perception of you because now I know your viewpoints and you've already chewed me out. So I'm in no mood to help you. And so I'm like, it became really bad. And I kind of equated it to, we have to treat everybody the same, whether that's criminals, whether that's pedophiles, whether that's people who've beat up their spouses. We're expected to treat everybody the same. And so when it came to asking people that question, I'm like, it's really not going to change anything medically about what's going on. So I just stopped asking the question. I still screened, do you have a cough? Do you have fever? Do you have shortness of breath? Yes, no. If it was yes, we brought you in, we isolated you. If it was no, you were able to go into the waiting room. But I just stopped asking because it was nowhere near worth the aggravation to sit there and have people scream at you. And you're like, this changes nothing except for me wanting to have nothing to do with you.
Yeah. I think we're right on top of time, Billy, but I wanted to tell you, and I think you're absolutely spot on with, I think all of us, especially folks that have worked in that job, we are 10 times the leader because of that forced adversity, just everything that was put on us. Because you're making decisions and you're trying to do, you're having to make a lot of decisions for the greater good of everyone. Um, with not a lot of information. We have background, we have all the things, and the stuff that's being funneled in, we learn later that they didn't know. They just telling us what they think that what, and we take and these this is where I got. Um, these were folks that I considered subject matter expert. They could have said, "Hey, we're trying to figure this out," but they were like, "Do this. This is the rule, and you're going to follow it." Type mentality. And looking back on it now, I think that's because I always want to do the right thing. I always want to do the right thing, and so it was a really test, Billy. You're
Billy,
spot
can
on
I
with
just
what you
thank you for
said
your
there, dude.
service, for putting up with all of us during that time?
Oh, oh, I appreciate it. It's I think Jeff can tell you. I can. All I want to be since ninth grade was a paramedic. Uh, and it's just I got to do that, and I went to college to be a school teacher, but never did that at all. But yet, I really appreciate that. Thank you for your service at the ERs and everything, because I know we see the same thing just in different environments. And we used to, I know with Jeff, he was in EMS too, so we used to. I don't know if Jeff remembered this. We used to have like running jokes about between EMS and the ER staff, and we'd go, that we ain't got time to make that IV look all pretty with all the nice tape. If I'm in a sterile environment, I can get that done, but I'm upside down on the highway in the rain. I just got to get it in and make sure it's secured, and we'll figure it out once we get to the ER. So, it's always been that friendly camaraderie there. But Jeff, I agree, and and then when you mentioned something, Jen, when it came to the vaccines, that was a whole nother gambit of learning. I think that I remember the first time we got called and says they had. Now I said earlier we're a county of 57,000, and I get this call from the health department one day, says we got 200 vaccines, and you're gonna be the one that picks the 200 that gets the vaccine.
Oh.
And it's like I was either the most popular person, or the most hated
Yeah.
person.
Popular amongst 200 people. You
Well,
had you had 200 friends at the
hey,
time.
you got
200 elderly friends.
I
I could
think
almost
almost read
guarantee.
all day.
Yeah, right.
If
You're
you
right
remember me
here.
from third grade, it really was, and it was just crazy. And I get it. It's small town. And Jen has said something earlier about, I can still walk in Walmart and somebody comes up and my arm's hurting. Can you tell me what's wrong? Well, no, I don't have no idea what's wrong. And It's just a small town. Everybody knows you. Everybody knows what you did. And I know, Jeff, you're the same way with the law enforcement you was talking about. And I get it. I get it.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just who they identify you with, and it's
Yeah.
and that's for a lot of us. It's just the impact that you made, and it's felt, and that's neat. That's I used to get ticked off because I thought they was trying to rub my nose in something, and they're not. That's just who they identify me with.
Yeah, and
Um,
you're right. I think it's part of that is that it makes you feel good that people put that amount of trust in you and value your opinion to that. I'll give you another little story. I had a guy that I've known since I was a kid, and he came to my house about a month and a half ago. It was right around
Oh
Christmas.
no.
And he had some chest pain, and he went to the doctor, and the doctor had recommended he go for a cath. And he comes to my house wanting my opinion on whether he needed that cath. I'm like, dude, a cardiologist told you need this cath. I wouldn't be sitting in my house today. I'd be in that cath lab. And it ended up he had getting like 4 stents when he did have the cath. But then you think
yeah,
about
man, because you're
that
very,
amount of trust.
I can see that. I don't, I guess you're a trusted source of, because here's what you get. Now think about it, Billy. you know, um, those folks just rolled through that vaccine era, the do this era, the being told. Now a lot of it's like, oh, they're this will prevent and it doesn't, and all the language and stuff. And now there's a lot of backpedaling on that. And when you do that, those folks go to who they know who's never stirred them wrong, and that's that local paramedic who's front side of everything, who cannot distort the facts of the cars upside down, there's bodies everywhere, whatever that looks like. And you're the one that gets to tell it. You've had to tell it like it is from day one, and from whatever incident. So I think that speaks to your reputation that you're going to shoot someone straight in the end game.
Well, I appreciate
You
that.
too,
And Jen, it's been
Billy.
nice talking to you. Nice meeting you. And
Well, I'm excited, Billy. You've had some great progress on your business, man. We were talking earlier. You got some new folks coming in. Real quick, tell everybody what you do and how they can connect with you.
I teach a lot of OSHA classes. One I do a lot for the hospitals is called OSHA 1910-120, which deals with basically dealing with hazardous materials in the hospitals. If they have lab spills, how to deal with the RCRA laws and getting rid of hazardous waste. And what is hazardous waste? We do a lot of that. We do a lot of like confined space, lockout, tag out. We can do bloodborne pathogens. We can do respiratory protection. I'm in talks now with the hospital down in Tidewater about coming in and testing 200 PAPRs for them and train their staff on using the PAPRs, which if you're watching and unfamiliar, that's the air purifying respirator that actually scrubs the air
Yeah.
out. And it became real popular back in the COVID era there. So work with that. Me and my wife own Ferguson Safety Solutions. So if you're watching, give us a call. You can hit us up on LinkedIn or Facebook, or my email is wferguson62@gmail.com. And Jeff laughs. And my other one is william.ferguson@fergusonsafetysolutions.com. It takes about 2 pages to write it out on. But that comes through, or you can get a hold of Jeff, and you can give me a call, and it don't cost anything to talk, but we think we do a real good program, and we've had some real good success thanks to Jeff, and he's helping me navigate the business side of it, and I do see more and more that Jeff was talking to me when we started talking about this. It's like, you have a wealth of knowledge, but it's all been in public safety. That's all you ever did is public safety. But a lot of these people would could be able to transition this to private business, private industry, because it doesn't matter, that you were dealing with viruses and germs. We can deal with, Jen mentioned that don't trust anybody. I'm kind of like the same way. And Jeff, I remember up at Sheriff's Department, they used to have a sign where I said, in God we trust, everybody else we're going to fingerprint.
Right.
So I remember that and stuff. So, then you throw the big politics into it that really
Yeah.
messes up things or convolutes everything. But
You're doing good. Like, so don't, you got your referrals are picking up. I mean, it's about putting reps in now, and we're gonna keep dialing it in. Jen, I give him a hard time about that long email. I'm like, man, just think about if you had to write that, Billy. Come on,
Oh,
man.
I know,
Sure.
man. They give you that little thing about that long to write your email on those evaluation forms, and especially because I write big too, so I get it. So, Jen, if you ever
Jen,
want some other information up in Canada, we'd be glad to come up
Come
and
on.
see the Buffalo Bills play Niagara Falls
Listen,
and
we're
look across the
accepting,
bridge
so
there.
just come
So,
right.
on up.
yeah,
No problem.
it's funny when you said I don't know if Jeff sees this, but every night I'm watching TV and I don't know what the push is with Ontario, Canada, because right now there's this big push on where I live on local commercials. It'll be like Ontario, we're just to the north, we're your greatest, and it tells about all the different dishes that go across, and it's like a 30-second
I
commercial
didn't
every
know
night.
that we
It
were
comes
like
on like
trying to
that. I'm
recruit
like,
people
wow,
that
man,
hard. I mean, like,
yeah. Well, I think it's on both sides. It's saying that that a lot of their
yeah,
innovation that the U.S. uses is coming out of Ontario, and it talks about minerals that they're defined, and I
very
think it
much
goes back
so.
to the political environment and all
Yeah,
these
we're
tariff
not super
stuffs. No matter
pumped
what
about the
side
tariffs.
you're
It's
on, I
already
think
bad
it
enough
all
with the
gets.
exchange rate, and so yeah, to be fair, with the political statements of Canada becoming the 51st state, nothing has unified Canada more. And if anybody knows much about Canada,
All
so
right.
Quebec, the very French speaking portion of Canada, they've wanted to separate for millennia. They continue to talk about separating. Well, all of a sudden they're right on board with the rest of us, going like, "Oh my god, we can't believe this!" So we're all going like, "Oh, Quebec's on board. Like, you guys better watch out."
That's too cool. That is really cool. I meant to ask you about that earlier,
Oh,
what the climate was with that. That's neat to hear.
100%.
That would be cool. Then we can just
Listen,
come visit, Billy.
I'm like
We ain't got a
45 minutes
passport,
from the
man. We just
falls.
go
It's
There
run
you
with it.
go.
gorgeous.
There you
Come
go.
on
Just
down. Come on down. We'll send you with a ton of maple candy back. It's
That's
great.
too cool.
there you
That's
go.
fine.
Well, I'm diabetic. It'll have to be
Free
sugar
healthcare.
free.
Come
Yeah,
All right.
that's right. That's right. Jen, tell us where we can find your book, and then whatever
Yeah.
else you got cooking that you want
So
to
you can
share as
find
we
me at
close up.
www.nursejen2ns.ca or www.rxforgrowth.com, forgrowth.com. I'm most active on LinkedIn. So if you search up Jennifer Johnson, BSCNRN, you can find me there. I'm on Amazon also. If you search up Jennifer Johnson RN or Jennifer A. Johnson RN, you can find my book as well as all of my journals. Have got some education for heart patients. I have got a heart journal that maybe I'll have to send your way, Billy, just so you can test it out for me to see if you like it. And just well, intuition, but again,
Intuition,
it's
right
just
there.
another thing to the physicians love data, and we all love data as clinicians. So if you're coming in as a heart patient and all of a sudden you've gained 10 pounds in 2 weeks, you can't sleep laying flat, you have to sit straight up, or you're sleeping in the lazy boy, your legs are swelling, all these kind of things, we're like, oh, you're kind of fluid overloaded, we'll have to give you a little water pill and we'll fix you right up. But it's, are you having chest pains? How long does it last? What gets rid of it? Just again, keep track of things, because it's easy enough when you just kind of have a flick of chest pain, you're like, is that anything? That's fine, and you rest and it goes away and it's not a big deal. But in the meantime, like, maybe you're having something else brewing in the background.
Yeah. Man, thank you for sharing that with us, team. I had some good things roll this week as well. I'm working on some content, and I got part of it out now on just alignment for leaders, and it just gets into. I've had, and I called one of them today. I had like 7 business calls of my business coaching clients, 7 of them in a row, really started having some of these issues where we were working through, and their bottlenecks wasn't businesses, all these things. It was, they were kind of getting in their own way, and some of it was just hold over from things like Jen experienced, things like I've experienced in our past, to where it was just nagging, dragging us down. So I've got a bunch of content out on alignment for leadership. I got a workbook that I've created, and just something to really get your brain working, to where you can hopefully start getting out of your own way. So a lot of it's the tactics that's helped me over the years kind of dial in who I am now, and just a lot of self discoveries. And when I find something that works for me, I want to share it with the world. So if you'll either comment alignment below, if you're watching alignment below, if you'll comment below, I'll send you the workbook. If you jump over on Instagram, if you'll send me a message at my Instagram handle at Jeff Rabason, we can create a video message there, and I'll still send you the workbook. So you too, man. I had a feeling this conversation was going to go off without any issues at all. Just knowing the three of us and the individual conversations I'm able to have with both of you, and then bringing you together, I just don't think there's enough hours in the day. So thank you for giving us some insight and helping just tell folks about ER life and what that looks like, and some of our own struggles, and some of our own takeaways from that life. And Billy, really want to dive deeply into that COVID conversation in one of our future episodes if we have
Yeah,
time. So yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And Jen, just one thing before I have to go is that me and Jeff's been working on something. I don't know if you're familiar with, about in 2015, there was a shooting
Oh
of
my
two
God.
reporters on live TV that was doing a story, and they got killed on live TV. Well, I
Oh
ended up being
no.
the instant commander at that scene, and I'm putting together a program on. It's called When the Circus Comes to Town. It's about, you wake up in a small town at 6:30 in the morning, and about 2 o'clock that afternoon, you're in national
Ugh.
media. You're on Fox, CNN, all those channels, and how you navigate those waters. So we're putting together a program on that. So maybe sometime we can connect,
Absolutely.
and I could get up to
Absolutely.
Ontario and put
100%.
that program on. So
Yeah, and I'm gonna send you I'll send you the article link from that, Jen, so you can just spin up on it, and you can, if you Google beyond that, it's a really
Yeah.
really unique story. It has its own uniqueness, and then it's right there in our hometown as well. So, but it's still debated today. I'm just in your gun control issues and things along those lines. And Billy played a pivotal role in that. So we're working on dialing in that for him. So folks, for you all listening and watching, that's something we're going to have coming out. And if I were you, just knowing where that program's going, I would definitely get on Billy's speaking schedule to be one of the first ones to hear that, and then make sure that you book Nurse Jen to come to your event as well. Thank you too. Appreciate you
Thank
being
you so
here, you
much for
guys.
having me.
Thanks for tuning in.